You're listening to WKCR FM New York, Sun Ra Festival continuing. You just heard the sounds of Sun Ra, not with the full orchestra, but featuring a soloist who has been featured with him in a number of live contexts in the recent past, and that is Vincent Chancey. Vincent Chancey, again, is with us in the studios, and let's see, Vincent, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me make sure where you're connected up here. Make sure this is right. Okay. All right. That looks like us. How you doing, Vincent?
Oh, good. Nice to be here.
Okay.
And for a good reason also.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me ask you something. As I mentioned, you've been featured a number of times with Sun Ra in the duet setting or trio, quartet setting, but featuring you as a soloist,
right,
along with his keyboards. And in, I think, 1985, I had the pleasure of being at Sweet Basil once. The orchestra was playing, and you were there. Mm-hmm. And most of the set that I saw, the complete set that I saw, was either the orchestra playing standards, such as from the swing era, like
right.
Christopher Columbus, or it was quartets with you as the featured soloist.
Right.
And it was a very nice mix, and I thought it showed some valuing in particular of your talent by Sun Ra to do something like that, which is uncommon for him, really. Right. When did that start? When did that practice of his start?
Well, actually, Sun Ra was one of the first few, was actually the first noted person who really took advantage of me and gave me the room to just stretch out and play. I don't really know what his reasoning was. I know we work well together in many situations. Mm-hmm. Because usually in a context like that, either one person is leading or the other is leading, in terms of the melody and harmony. And I can easily follow him, and he can, be in front and behind me and everywhere else. He can like set things up, and as I take a direction, he'll often change it, or I'll try to change it, or whatever. I mean, we do work well. I think he recognizes that. It's something we never really talked about, but we've always had a good musical conversation.
Okay, and let's go back further in the past to the beginning.
Right.
How did you become a member of the orchestra?
It was a very strange story.
Okay.
I was, first of all, I was sitting in with Don Cherry at the 5 Spot one day because he had seen me do a gig before.
About when was this?
This is in 75.
Okay.
Right. I did a gig with, I think Abdul Wadul was on the gig, and David Murray, a very young David Murray, mind you. And we were working with the singer who had worked with Ornette for a while. Her name was Allison Mills. So Don saw me on this gig, so Don invited me down to sit in with him. So I was there, and I played that night. And Ahmed Abdullah was there, so Ahmed said, wow. So he had left the band, so I said, all right. So he said, why don't you give Sonny a call, So I called Sun Ra up on the phone, and I said, Sun Ra, my name is, Vincent Chancey, and I play the French horn, and I understand that you had French horn in the band once, and maybe you'd be interested in having another one. So his response was, well, my music is tailor-made. I used to have a French horn in the band, but the French horn left, so now I rearranged all the arrangements and arranged the French horn out of the band. So in other words, nice talking to you, but right. I can't do anything for you. Mm-hmm. So we talked a little while after that, and then at the end of the conversation, he said, well, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, I don't really have anything happening. So he said, well, Ahmed is coming down to Philadelphia for a rehearsal. Why don't you come down with him? So I went down, and I got to the house, and he was playing his film, Spaces to Play. They were editing it and going through it and, whatnot. I heard about the film, but I'd never seen it. So I just sat there, pretty amazed and just looking at the film.
I'll ask you about that later.
Right.
Okay.
So eventually we got to the point of playing, and he just said, he asked me to just... He played a few things on piano, even, as you said, this duet conversational thing. Mm-hmm. He played something on piano, and he said, he asked me to play some things with him, and I did. And this was at the house, so as I started playing, I noticed Gilmore came into the room with his tenor, Marshall. Okay. 3 minutes later came in with his horns. And then next thing I knew, I was surrounded by, the whole band. They were all saying, like, who's this guy, So Sun Ra, proceeded to carry on a rehearsal, and just including me in the rehearsal just as if I was always there. Calling up tunes and then just taking the time out right then to write a part out for me.
How about that?
So, after, a few hours of rehearsal, I think this probably went on about 10 or 15 hours. So I was ready to go back to New York. So he said, well, what are you doing next week? I said, well, I'm not doing anything. He said, well, do you have a passport? I said, yeah. He said, well, meet us Tuesday at the airport. We're going to Europe.
Really? Oh, this was when?
This was in 1976.
Okay. And that's that summer tour?
And that was that summer tour with the Live at Montreux album.
Right.
So I had just joined this band maybe a week before that album was recorded.
Really? So did you join actually before Craig?
Well, Craig got in around that same time. In fact, I went to, I was at that rehearsal, and I think I went to one other rehearsal after that, before going to the airport, actually, and did one gig at the Bottom Line. So Craig was at the second rehearsal and on the Bottom Line gig. So we both came in the band together. We were two, Well, kids. Well, later from that tour, somebody wrote that I was 15 years old, and somebody had a 15-year-old French horn player.
Well,
I think people still think that, so what are you, like 23 now? I was, more than 11 or 12 years older than that then.
Well, I'll tell you, in the Live at Montreux album, that was recorded during that 76 tour, there's a picture of the, brass section. And you and Craig, you can pass for teenagers.
I know.
That's something else. Right. And, so it was right from, almost, having no involvement at all with Sun Ra's music to a European tour.
Right. Which lasted about 3 months. I know.
And 2 records came out of it, Cosmos, the studio album, and then the, what's actually a double album, Live at Montreux.
Right.
And that's all from the summer of 76. And, Craig, I spoke with, Friday. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we don't have that tape to play. But, one thing he did say was that it wasn't that hard to play the music because, it was on the job training. And he said that basically it was eating and breathing the music, almost all day long.
Right. I mean, we'd have rehearsals in hotel rooms, like, 12, 15 horns sitting around on 1 or 2 beds.
Wow.
Rehearsing in the hotel. So everybody keeping the volume down.
It could have been too easy. That's something else. So, okay. So how long did you stay in the orchestra as a regular member?
Yeah, as a regular member, I probably stayed in maybe about 2 or 3 years, I think. By 78 or 79, I started to really get busy with a lot of other things and get a lot of different calls to do things outside of the orchestra, which I felt like I wanted to do also. So after then, I just sporadically, worked with Sun Ra.
Okay.
When I can, sometime. Other times there's been periods where it's been like a year in between my gigs with him.
I see. Yeah. But you're always welcome back.
Yeah, he seems to always, hold his hand out.
Okay. So the album that we heard from, the tune was called Celestial Realms. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but Celestial Realms was the tune. Feature for Vincent Chancey with Sun Ra. And the title of that album is that Journey Among the Stars, or that's
I don't know. There's about 3 different titles on there. I don't know if they correspond to the album or the songs or what.
Okay, but that's
it's one of these albums with no cover, so you have no way of knowing.
That's recorded live in 1980.
Right. I think it was recorded in Detroit.
All right. The rest of the album, is there anything else with you featured?
I think there is something on the other side.
Okay. All right, so we can get to that. I think that is the track Journey Among the Stars. And we'll let people hear that. Let's see, in the meantime, I do want to mention that you're a regular member of the group then from 76 to about 79.
Right.
Also made the horror big band, full orchestra, I should
Storyville.
say. Album, right, at Storyville. Unity. And also The Other Side of the Sun involved there on that album. Anything else?
Actually, I did several other albums with Sun Ra after that, after 79.
Really?
I think I'm probably on 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or 15. I don't know, maybe as many as 10, counting the Saturn labels. But I know on a lot of the independent label things that he did, I'm on at least 3 or 4 of those because he would often call me for sessions when they would do things in New York.
Okay, so studio sessions only, or?
Yeah, basically. And, the Saturn things probably came from live recordings, as is the one we're playing, right?
So there are a number of albums where we just don't have the orchestra personnel that you're probably on from the early 80s.
Right.
Okay. Right. All right. So let's hear Journey Among the Stars. And again, Vincent Chancey is who we're talking with, one of our premier French hornists in jazz today, following in the tradition of people like Bob Norton, Julius Watkins.
Of course, this album was recorded when I was a baby, though.
Okay. Around 1980 or so,
Right.
Okay, so Journey Among the Stars. Sun Ra, also Vincent Chancey, I guess, in the studio right now during this festival. All right, and that was Journey Among the Stars, and courtesy of Vincent Chancey, we do have some more information on that record.
Right, I think it featured, the drummer was a guy who calls himself Samurai.
Okay.
I don't know any other name he goes by. And Sun Ra, of course, was playing Yamaha organ, and I'm pretty sure it was a Moog synthesizer.
All right. And that's from the same album that has Celestial Realms, and in the discography that we are abridging, amending, editing in various ways, but using as a guide that Tillman Stahl put together. Published in 1983. In that discography, it's listed as Oblique Parallax, which is one of the titles on the album.
Right.
So we'll call this album Oblique Parallax from now on. Okay, Vincent Chancey, though, featured on French horn, especially on the first part of that track, Journey Among the Stars, which takes up a whole album side. And you recall the date of recording as being 1980, live at the Jazz Center in Detroit, Michigan. Okay. And so that was the time when you were you still really a regular member of the orchestra at that point?
No, by then I was in and out.
In and out? Okay.
Because I was doing a lot of other things around that time.
Right, okay. Let me ask you something that I mentioned I would get to before. The movie Space is the Place. We even had one caller about that in the last hour, asking about that film. And the album, I guess, Space is the Place, really is served as a soundtrack album for that movie.
Right.
Now, in your introduction to Sun Ra in '76, you had the opportunity to see it.
Right. I first saw, bits and pieces of it. The first time I met Sun Ra, he was sitting in the dark room watching this film. So, I sat there and watched the film. It was a film that came out, I think, around the early 70s. Maybe 73, 71, maybe, somewhere in there. And it played at some of the weekend midnight theaters around the country. I know it was in D.C. It played in Brooklyn here. And a couple places. I think it was at the Billie Holiday Theater that it was playing at. But it was a really incredible film about Sun Ra and the orchestra coming to Earth from outer space in a spaceship that was fueled by music. So, they would get in the ship and the guys would start playing and the ship would take off. And, it was, I think he came here on a mission to save the Earth from self-destruction, or maybe not self-destruction, but destruction by its inhabitants.
And so it's really a feature film.
Yeah, I mean, it was a film that they went to Hollywood and filmed, and they used actors, and it goes through different phases. I can remember where there was one part, early scene. Well, actually, maybe the band didn't come from outer space. Actually, I think the band actually left planet and went outer space, because in the beginning it opens up with Sun Ra playing in a club in the 30s or 40s in Chicago, playing to a chorus line of dancing girls.
How about that?
It's a very peculiar film. There was one funny incident in the film where Sun Ra was captured by some Earthlings.
Right.
And they decided to tie him up in a chair and torture him. So they took him and put him in a chair and put headphones on him and made him listen to country and western music, which was a form of torture.
Oh man. So, were there any actors that may be recognizable to anybody in it? Were there Hollywood actors
I
put
know
in it also?
there were Hollywood actors involved in it, but I don't remember any names.
Okay. You know. Did Sun Ra actually write the film?
He did write it, and of course did all the music.
In it. How about that? So, and everybody in the orchestra of the time is in it.
Yeah. From that period. The dancers and everybody was in the orchestra. There was a point also in the movie where they show them on the place where they come from, and they're walking through like this blue haze with bubbly sounds in the background. It sounds like lava boiling.
Oh my goodness.
It's really an intriguing film. In fact, I saw it, they played it, the last time Sun Ra played at the Squat Theater. They had it upstairs. That may have been maybe 4 years ago. You know, and they had a copy of it there, and they were playing it in between sets.
Really? All right. And it's a full-length film.
Full-length.
Okay.
2 full hours.
All right. So Richard Wilkinson, who was here before, he mentioned that he believes that Sun Ra does have a copy of that. So hopefully at some point in the future, people will be able to.
I mean, it's a great thing to have at revival theaters. You know, they have these theaters where they, you know, show art films and whatnot. That would be a really good one to, you know, bring back. In fact, a lot of those theaters, they have like a recommended list of things that you would ask the cinema to bring. And every time I've, you know, written that down as something they should bring in to the theater.
Good. So hopefully more people do the same. You know, everybody be able to see it again, right?
Instead of the Rocky Horror Show.
Time after time after time. Okay. So another album that you're on that is more widely available, what should I say, distributed, is The Other Side of the Sun, which was put out by Sweet Earth Records in Massachusetts.
On this side of the sun, actually. In Massachusetts.
Okay. And The Sunny Side of the Street, believe you have a feature.
Yeah, a short solo, I think. I play on there in between Gilmore and Sun Ra, I think.
Okay. So let's get to that, and that will take us up to about the hour of 6. Again, in the studio with me is Vincent Chancey on French horn. You'll hear him on this next track, The Standard Sunny Side of the Street. I'm Elliot Bratton. This is WKCR FM New York, the Sun Ra Festival.
From an Unknown Planet.
This is a great title.
It's such an appropriate title for the song when you hear it, you know. So maybe we should have a listen to it.
Yeah, let's go right to
Jazz from an Unknown Planet.
Jazz from an Unknown Planet. Sun Ra and the Orchestra, and Vincent Chancey able to enlighten us on how that title came about. All right. And the personnel, Sun Ra on the Roxacord or electric harpsichord, and John Gilmore on tenor sax, Marshall Allen and Danny Davis altos and flutes, Danny Thompson baritone sax and flute, Elo Omo bass clarinet and flute, James Jack Jackson, and he's listed as Jack Jackson here, the nickname, on bassoon and flute. And the very young and now recognized,
now very old,
still pay your compliment. His all-star brass section of Ahmed Abdullah on trumpet, Craig Harris trombone, and Vincent Chancey on French horn. The bassist R. Anthony Bunn, Larry Bright on drums. Cosmos is the name of that album. Vincent Chancey's first ever in the studio, and first recording session, studio session with Sun Ra and the orchestra.
A very unusual studio too. Is one of these caves, you know, where you go down like 2 or 3 levels in Paris. It was like a subterranean, very cold, you know, damp kind of a place. You know, with these arched ceilings.
How about that?
It was miserable. A good place for jazz from an unknown planet to be recorded.
But a very, very nice session. And the Roxacord prominent throughout, a lot of different colors and tones coming out of the record, out of the music. All right, Cosmos. So we're going to get to something else that you're involved in with an opening statement, and this is an album which I think is a great title for an album, A Fireside Chat with Lucifer. All right,
not your usual title.
Not at all. Tell us a little bit about this recording session and the title, if you have any insight into that.
Well, you know, if the listeners have been listening, they really realize that, Sunrise is constantly, throughout his lifetime been interested in, mythology and religious things, and the whole thing with good and evil and, the dark world and the world of the sun and whatnot. In fact, it makes me think of this train ride. I did a train ride with Robert Barry, who was probably one of Sunrise's first drummers, I think.
Uh-huh.
I think he started working with Sunrise about 1947 and 1948, a few years before the orchestra started. I was living in Chicago at that time. This was one summer. I was actually in New York, but I went to Chicago for one summer. And he still lives there. So Sunrise was bringing us to New York, I guess, or somewhere on the East Coast. So I had like a 23 hours train ride with Robert. And he started talking about how when he first met, Sunrise, he was still Sonny Blunt. It's before he had changed his name. Mm-hmm. And he said he invited him over to his house. And he lived in a one-room apartment. And when he walked in the apartment, you couldn't see any walls because the walls were lined with books laying flat down on the floor on their backs, piled all the way up to the ceiling.
Really?
All the way across all the walls, entirely around the entire room.
Wow.
This is a period when Sunwell was really, like reading a lot of mythological things and UFOs and studying religions, a lot of different Eastern philosophy, Chinese, this sort of thing. And because Robert, numerology, astrology, Robert said he sat there and looked at all the books and said, wow, man, you sure have a lot of books, but I don't know what none of this stuff is, man, I mean, it was like, total foreign world for him. And he kept saying at that point, when he'd go over to Sunrise House to rehearse or whatever, and he would always be immersed in a book, or 5 or 6 of them at once, Right. And he was really like, investigating the cosmos in the literary form.
Yes.
But anyway, just leading up to this thing that Sunrise has with good and evil, light and dark, and the devil and whatnot. People call people the devil and demons and good people, speaking of them in other
as
ways. Angels, right?
Right.
Like one time he was telling me. In fact, one of the most recent conversations I had. He said some guy was talking to him. He said, "Well, Sunrise, let me talk to you man to man." He said, "Well, first of all, I'm not a man, so no need in even going into the conversation."
He said, "I'm an angel."
Right, he's an angel. Mm-hmm. So, like this title, Fireside Chat with Lucifer, is within this whole genre, things.
Right. Okay.
So let's have a listen.
Yes, have a listen to that. And again, I'm Elliot Bratton. With me in the studio, Vincent Chancey, and you'll hear his opening French horn statement on this track. Listening to the Sun Ra Festival here at WKCR FM New York. This is a Fireside Chat with Lucifer. A Fireside Chat with Lucifer. Sun Ra and the orchestra featuring in the introduction the French horn work of Vincent Chancey. Also, of course, solos on bassoon by James Jack Jackson. On the baritone sax by Danny Thompson.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Walter Miller was playing trumpet on there too, once again.
Okay. And any insight into the keyboard Sun Ra played on that composition?
Well, no, I really can't say.
Okay.
But speaking of Walter Miller, this trumpet player, he's a guy who's been in and out of the band with Sun Ra for probably 25 years or so. He's not one of the people that a lot of people know, but he's from Alabama, actually.
Like Sun Ra.
Right, and when he still lives there, so Sun Ra sends for him from Alabama to do gigs and tours and whatnot.
How about that?
But he's an incredible player. He said that he was one of the few remaining people from the Otis Redding band, because he was in that band when the band went down, but he didn't make the gig.
Wow. How about that? The plane crash.
Walter Miller.
Wow.
Incredible player.
All right. So Vincent Chancey still with us in the studio. We're gonna wrap up this segment of the festival and lead on into a segment dealing with standards, Sun Ra playing standards. But before that, let's talk a little bit about Sun Ra's own compositions and how he goes about writing them. Vincent Chancey, your years with the orchestra, you got an opportunity to see that.
Right. Well, he has several approaches in writing. Oftentimes he'll, quarterly, melodically, he'll have a melody and and add parts contrapuntally against a melody, which is a really interesting way. I was always intrigued when he would do that, because he would have a pre-existing melody that he'd written out or whatever, and, of course, the chords to it. And he would have these parts being played while he would play just another part against it. And then he would write that part out and give it to somebody and have both of those people play, and then he'd write a third part against that. All lines moving differently in different ways, which is an incredible way of writing. But most composers just don't have the musicians, just at their disposal to sit there and hold their horns while, and this guy is writing a part out, an entire, 64 bar, composition or whatever. But, it's a really unique way of writing, and a lot of his compositions that really have that interflow and lines going in and out of each other like that come as a result of him being able to write this way.
Okay. And tell us about this one story in particular that you mentioned off mic. That has something to do with compositional style.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's this guy who's recently been playing with Sun Ra, a tenor player, who actually started in the band in the early 50s. He told me that he started playing in the band before Gilmore, I think around 52. And he was in the band, but, things got busy, and I think he said he went on the road with Billie Holiday, so he didn't make, a gig, and then he eventually just got carried away doing her gig and didn't go back to the band. So he was saying about 2.5 years ago, I think, he was in San Francisco where he's living now, and he decided that he would go see Sun Ra because he saw that he was advertising. He said, I'm going to go see Sun Ra and see if he still remembers me, So he went backstage before the gig while they were setting up. And soon he opened the door. Sun Ra said, "Ronald Wilson, come in here." So Ronald, a little behooved, wondering, how he even remembered who he was. So he said, at that point, Sun Ra said, "Do you have your horn?" So Ronald said, "Yeah, I do have my horn, actually." He said, "Well, take it out because I have a part here that I just wrote for you." And he handed him the part with his name written on the top of it. So Ronald said he was so intrigued by that whole situation.
Knew he was coming.
Right. That he said, "Oh man, Sonny hasn't changed in all these years."
Really?
So he started playing with the band again.
Okay.
And he's been with the band
and I know
almost regularly for the last few years. Incredible player.
Yes, he is. I've seen him with the band at Sweet Basil and so forth. Yes. Quite a musician.
Right.
Yes, okay. And Vincent Chancey, that you are also. One of our top French artists and someone
hanging with it.
I know you lead your own groups these days too.
Yes, right. I had a gig the other night. Yeah, looking forward to doing more work with that.
Okay. And we will probably see you with Sun Ra the Orchestra occasionally in the future.
Right. Possibly. Okay. June Tyson told me to remind all you people out there that there's a tour coming up in California, so put on your silver spacesuits and head out that way.
All right, Sun Ra the Orchestra doing the West Coast tour in May, starting in May anyway.
Right.
Vincent Chancey, thank you.
Okay.
And the last selection, this chosen by Mr. Chancey for you to hear, is from that first studio album that he did with the orchestra, Cosmos, something called The Mystery of Two.
Yes.
Okay.